I mean, for someone who says they don't like entertaining drama, they certainly like to start it. I bet you're wondering how we got here. I frequently am wondering that myself, actually, considering it all started with this email. Just an email letting them know that I was researching something for a video. One email and one phone call from them later, and here we are in a very strange, weird place that I am going to try to turn into a teaching moment. Because there is a teaching moment here. I wonder if Taylor Swift had this much fun in her Reputation era. So, for the TLDR on all of this, a few months ago, I had a number of people, both in the comments of a YouTube video about Lush patents and trademarks, as well as in DMs, contact me about some interesting things that Keda Molds, Soapery, whatever, were doing. And initially, it was just, whispers in the night. No real information behind it. Just anecdotal, really. People saying that Keda was claiming that other people were stealing their molds, or Keda stealing mold designs from other 3D bath bomb mold maker companies. But again, anecdotal. There was no teeth until about 6 weeks ago. People started coming to me with teeth. Actual DMCA takedowns filed on their websites by Keda, claiming that their copyrights had been infringed under penalty of perjury.
Why the f you lying? Why you always lying? Oh my God, stop fucking lying.
And so I set to work. I started doing some research, looking into the trademarks that Keda does not have, looking into the copyrights that Keda does not have. And I had all the information in hand. I had all my research done. I was ready to go, save for one last piece. Talking to Keda, getting their side of the story. And that's where that email comes in. And that, my friends, is why we are here today. Well, that and Bill and Whaley Keda decided to have an absolute meltdown on the internet, my God, and create drama where actually none existed because nobody was talking about this online. Nobody. Not a person. So because they opened the floodgates and ultimately, I guess, according to Bailey, seemed to think that I already did this video, like I would waste a live with an intellectual property lawyer on you. Stupid. I'm Bailey Keda, the world revolves around me. I guess the title of this video will leave no doubt. And so ultimately the video that I was going to do, which involves copyrights, copyright infringements, DMCA takedowns, the dangers of doing things in this business as we, do all of the time here. This isn't anything new. We're going to turn this all into a teaching moment. But because the Kate has melted down on the internet, I get to talk about that too. So we will get to all of that in just a minute. But before I do, hello, I am Mrs. Soap and Clay. Let's make stuff.
Are you ready for it?
Oh, that was fun. How's it going, Sudsers? Welcome back to the channel. You are at Soap and Clay, where we make all the soapy things. And you were here for day 346 of 365 days of soap. Yeah, we're going backwards in time because I had to hold this video to triple check with my attorney before releasing it. Speaking of the attorney thing, there are some big disclaimers and some announcements right off the bat. First up, this video is not monetized. If you see an ad on this video, I highly suggest that you go to the Google, because if you have social media, you also have Google, and ask Google why that occurs, and they'll give you an answer. In general, this has never been about the money for me, the YouTube channel. It's literally my hobby and for funsies. But since, Keda likes to file false flags on people, allegedly, I am not giving them any opportunity at all to do so. And speaking of Keda, if you are a Keda super stan that only clicked on this video because you saw their name in the title and you're just itching to throw that water boy energy out,
no kind of saying it's you're wrong. Mama's right.
I guess introductions are in order. As I said, I'm Mrs. Soap and Clay, also known as Shantine, and in this corner of the internet, we debunk and demystify the soap making process, the cosmetic making process. And in addition to that, we do a lot of deep dives into the products that we make, into the items that we purchase in order to make said products, into our labeling requirements, into the law, including copyrights, trademarks, patents, infringements, just a lot of ways to make you a better business owner, as well as a better maker. So we have built a very cool community here, and as long as you play by the rules that you had to click before you could type anything in my comments section, welcome. If you're here to be a dick, you get the boot like everybody else. To the Sudsers, another disclaimer. While I am focusing strictly on a specific business and what they are doing to bring the house of cards that is the 3D bath bomb mold making world down, and while I will be getting a little bit petty because, they started it and decided to make an issue where none existed, that is not what I encourage you to do on the internet, okay? What we are talking about here stays within the constructs of this video, of this channel, and this is in no way my blessing for any of you to go out and start just trashing Keda on any of their socials. That's not what this is about. Because they're trying to spin a narrative about me specifically, I am bringing the receipts to address all of this, as well as to highlight the kind of people that they are and the kind of business owners that they are, in order to show probably why they got to where they are today with all of these ridiculous, DMCA takedowns, and claiming that they have ownership of files that they can't prove, in my opinion. And so I'm going to say things. Again, we are not sending hate to anybody. So any criticism, any talk about Keda that may come of this, any dialogue, any discourse, stays to this comment section specifically, okay? And you're going to do it the way that you guys always do it, in a respectful manner. Period. For the Keda super stans that are here just because their name is in this title, if you drop any hateful, ridiculous comments that do not actually promote discourse, first, they will be screen capped and used in another video, for sure. But following that, you're going to get the boot. And that's just all there is to it. So keep that in mind. Speaking of hateful comments from the Keda super stans, hi, Carla. Oh no, an ad hominem attack. Whatever will I do? Lazy. Just lazy. But to everything else with the disclaimers, 95% of the screenshots and the assets and everything that I am sharing within this video are public record from governmental websites going through their trademark filings or their attempt to file trademarks or their copyright filings or, again, their attempt to do so, as well as information that has been shared with me, and the people that sent it to me have said that I can use this in this video to show what Keda has done to them. So the rest of it that's being shared, all of the Waterboy clip and screenshots that I got from the Keda's, bath bomb maker page thing when I was still allowed to be there and they were going hard on me for no reason whatsoever, that all falls under fair use. And if you're confused about fair use, I highly suggest that you look up copyright law and read it. All of it. It's long. You'll get really good information, for sure. And finally, all of this information, again, this is just my research and my compiling of all of the things, and ultimately is just my opinion. Because I'm not the arbiter of justice, and I don't make the final call in any of this, or in your lives, or all the things. Now that we have that out of the way, let's get to the background of Keda Soap and kind of outline what's going on, address some very bad information and a weird narrative that they're trying to paint about all of this situation and me, and then get to where I want to ultimately take this, which is the teaching moments and copyright and the fun stuff. But you know, first we have to address the lying liars that lie. So let's start out with the history of Keda Molds, soapery, whatever.
What did you expect now? That you feel better?
Okay, so first up, we should talk about copyright, what it is, what it do, all of the things before we launch into why any of this matters in the weird fights that, you know, Keda is picking with micro bath bomb mold making companies. Copyright is defined as the exclusive legal right given to an originator or an assignee to print, publish, perform, film, or record literary, artistic, or musical material, and to authorize others to do the same. That's just the basic definition, however. Copyright is a cornerstone of our democracy and who we are as United States citizens. It's big. In fact, it's so big that the copyright law, just Title 17, is 456 pages at this moment. And as courts continue to rule on what copyright is, what it isn't, what the violations are, how you can file for all of the things, they continue to add more pages to this law. It's big, it's nuanced. And that's what the copyright law outlines, all of the nuances. From things as simple as what can be copyrighted, i.e. an exclusive and unique work that you did that is somehow different from something that already exists in the world, either under, you know, our public domain or copyrighted material, stuff that's already copyrighted. So as a very base example on this, shapes are specifically mentioned that you cannot copyright. So I can't just draw a heart and then immediately go, oh, I own a copyright on this heart. It's just a heart. I haven't significantly changed that to make it transformative and different than just a heart. Same thing goes for things like fire trucks and airplanes and Christmas trees and all of that, which we will get to. Copyright law also outlines all of the exceptions to violations, when you can violate a copyright, under what parameters. But it also goes into detail about when you, as a copyright holder, can file a copyright infringement. And on the high level, just a little Cliff's Notes version of copyright, effectively what is always in play is what is colloquially known as a poor man's copyright. So essentially, whenever you put pen to paper and you write something, or you draw something, or you pick up, you know, your violin and you compose something, you own the copyright. You as the person that actually did this. You are the intellectual property right holder. You are the sole intellectual property right holder. And you can then choose to give licensing rights to other people to use and distribute your copyrighted material how you see fit. This all matters a lot in regards to the 3D bath bomb mold making world. A lot. Like, this is the whole point. This intellectual property ownership, you know, scenario, which we will get into in great detail. The file creation, how 3D renderings are created in the first place, as well as how digital media and digital artwork is treated within copyright law and who owns that property when we get a web developer and a graphic designer, subject matter experts on to talk about all of it. But just as a high level, this is basically what it is. And let's go ahead and just assume digital artwork for all of this, because that's reasonably what we are looking at when it comes to 3D bath bomb molds and whether or not somebody stole somebody else's stuff. So it starts out with the person who made the file, who took an image off of maybe public domain, which happens a lot actually in the creation of all of this, modified it enough to make it actually different than the original, and or created an original. Here I have my thing. I have my rendering that I have now taken and converted into an STL format that then is printable on a 3D printer. STL files have been around since 1987. This is not new. People have been doing it for a long time. So the person that actually did that work, that designed the thing, the digital artwork, they are the intellectual property holder, period. Now, what that person then does is they take this thing that they made, because they made it for a specific reason. And this specific reason is to make 3D molds out of it. So they take that, they put it on the interwebs to sell. And so company one buys it with the licensing rights that say they can print it and use it for distribution, whatever the licensing rights say. And that's always individual to the intellectual property holder. And if you want 100% ownership rights over the thing that you're buying, it's going to cost you, with all graphic designers that I've reached out to. But because they are the intellectual property holder, the graphic designer, they can go on to sell it to all of these other companies with the same licensing agreements. So those companies that bought it from the intellectual property holder can take that, make the molds, and sell it to the makers, to the bath bomb makers in this instance. So we can all make the bath bomb in the shape of, insert whatever here. And none of us are in violation of copyright because the original person has sold these duly to all these companies that are then selling the finished product to us. But just because you purchased files or commissioned artwork does not mean that you own the copyright. Unless you have exclusive rights from the original IP creator, exclusive rights, and they have literally signed over their copyright rights, you don't own it, and you cannot copyright it. And even if you go to try to copyright it, it says in the forms that if you are not the original creator of this piece of art, you also have to name the original creator, because the government wants to reach out to the original intellectual property holder and say, hey, somebody's trying to register your copyrighted material, the stuff that you made. Are you okay with it? Keep that in mind for when we start talking about why this is all problematic, what Keda has been doing to these companies. High level, the second you create something unique that can be logically, rationally sussed out to be unique, different than what's in the current sphere, it's yours. You own it, it's yours. The person that created it, that actually created it, not the person that commissioned it. But you can't actually do anything as far as enforce an action on a copyright violation until you properly register that with the Copyright Office, the federal office. There are also parameters within this very big copyright law and a huge website. Copyright.gov is huge. And with all of the circulars that they put out with all of this, it's an always changing avenue. Super wild, completely fascinating. If you're into this stuff, I recommend, going down this rabbit hole with me for sure. And even after that, once you have registered your copyright, there are still parameters that they have in place as far as how you can institute an action against somebody else for having violated your copyright or whatever. You had to have done these certain things in advance before you even do that. This is where cease and desist letters come in. This is why Disney, the biggest company ever that has all of the money to just flat out sue, always starts out with the cease and desist, because it's built into copyright law. And I want you to remember all of this. We will talk about all of these pieces in greater depth within this video and within other parts, because damn, this is going to be a multi-parter. But I definitely want you to remember this high-level basics before we talk about Keda, because it has to be connected, right? Yeah, it is. So let's get to, Keda's history and why they're trying to take down the industry that they claim they created. So the history of Keda Molds. They were Keda Soapery. They still are, legally or whatever. And they started out making soaps and cosmetics and all the things. And then they bought themselves one of those newfangled 3D printer things. And they started making 3D bath bomb molds, the shaped ones. So they could use it in their own making of bath bombs. And then they decided, hey, this is cool. People like the stuff. Let's go ahead and make a company out of that. And that's great. I love that. I love the entrepreneurship. It's amazing. So they did that thing. In 2018, they started out with like 3 printers in their dining room and they became what they are today. The biggest and best and most successful and first 3D bath bomb mold making company to ever exist that is so big and powerful and successful and busy that they have time to seek out some of the smallest 3D bath bomb mold making companies out there and hit them with DMCA takedowns. Try to take down their website. Weird flex, but okay. And that's basically where I come in with all of this. Because of the things that I do on the channel, because of the topics that we tackle, as far as the law and what we can and cannot do as business owners and all of the jazz, people started reaching out to me. And again, initially, back when we were doing the Lush thing, it was all anecdotal. And I don't work off the anecdotes, which I told them all in DMs. I mean, yeah, Keda being booted from last year's guild conference because they were dicks, that's interesting and funny information or whatever, but I can't make a video off of that. That's a nothing video. There's no teaching moment there. There's no anything. So that's what I told people. I have to have something of substance in order to do anything. And about 6 weeks ago, I got that something of substance in the form of 5 people, 5 businesses in as many days coming to me with actual receipts of Keda filing DMCA takedowns on these companies' websites for copyright infringement. And I went, that's interesting. Now I have something to go off of. And so I set to work. And obviously the first place that I went was uspto.gov looking for trademarks because I was a little bit confused by this in the first place. Me not having any experience whatsoever with the actual 3D bath bomb making world, like I don't buy them a lot. My bombs are usually round just across the board. And I'd never really thought about the whole process at all, which we're going to get into because it's really very interesting, like how this all works, this whole process. Anyway, I figured right off the bat they were filing the wrong thing anyway. It's not a copyright infringement, it's a trademark infringement because they would be like trademarking the actual image. Hi, editing me here. I actually reached out to 4 different intellectual property attorneys before publishing this, and they are all in agreement that this isn't a copyrightable thing because this isn't art, it's just chintzy modified clip art. And since like a process, like designing a 3D bath bomb mold would be considered a process, is specifically excluded from copyrightable material, it would be more like a patent. So there's that. Okay, sorry, back to the video. Right, like the finished product or the design. And so while I didn't find any trademarks for any of the molds that they were claiming were theirs, I did find a trademark that they had filed back in November of last year. And as we know from Bree and the conversation we had regarding trademark times or whatever, that trademark filing was still in process at that time. And that made sense because it's a really long lead time. And at that point, the trademark that they had filed and they were attempting to, get approved was for their name. So for their mark, as well as like everything on their website. Like they just put screen caps of their website. But anyway, there was already a trademark in process, no matter how weird it was. But that already gave me hope that, okay, Keda's doing this, by the book. Fine, cool. Then I go to copyright.gov and I do a search. Nothing. Not a single copyright out there. And, on one hand, because as we talked about with Bree, and as we've talked about, in previous videos, the idea behind, like a poor man's copyright is sound. That exists. The whole concept of the first time you create something, you sort of by default own a copyright on it. And I mean, that's true. Ish. That's why copyright registration is so important. And they didn't have any copyright registration, yet they filed these DMCA takedowns on the actual websites and Etsy shops of these makers, which was very unsettling to me. Because while it says in copyright law that you can't take an action against another person unless you actually have a registered copyright for something, that action usually is going to be interpreted as lawsuit. You can't sue. But for me, since filing a DMCA takedown is an action that could bring financial problems to a business, could impact them, it's considered a tortious act. And so, yeah, you still can't do that because you don't have this copyright registered. And so wheels are turning down this crazy rabbit hole. I go learning so much about all of the digital media copyrights, and it's fascinating along the way. And I get to the point where I'm like, this is actually a good video to make. This is information that everybody needs to have. And since I was using an example of a company actively trying to, impose some sort of copyright infringement claim on other companies, I figured that I had one last missing piece that I needed to address and get before I make a video. Because I'm not the kind of person who shows their ass on the internet, unlike Bill and Whaley. And that piece was actually contacting Cada and getting their side of the story. Thus, the email that I showed earlier.
What do you regret now? Thinking you were clever.
Now, the narrative that Bill and Whaley tried to paint on the internet is that, I randomly contacted them about things that had nothing to do with me, and oh my God, why are you crazy? I mean, first and foremost, let's talk about random, right? And the definition of random. Going back to the email that I sent, which reads more like a dissertation, if I'm being honest. It's long. Very transparent. I was not trying to sneak attack and snipe them and get weird information from them. Very straightforward with all of this. Very respectful. Told them exactly who I was, what I did, what the YouTube channel was for, the reason for me contacting them, and everything I had up to that point. Random. You keep using that word.
This shit is not random.
And to the other bit about why would you even do that? It's weird to me that it's weird to them that a business professional would reach out to another business professional and get information from them before making a video that involved them on the internet. It's called research, and it's something that I am very good at. I always have been, and I like to do. And so I wanted to cover all of my bases by reaching out to them, because that's what you do. And I understand that research might be confusing to someone that didn't pass first grade. So I think we should go to the experts for all of this and, get their opinion on it. Hey, Aylin.
Yeah,
Can I interview you?
yeah,
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. Appreciate that.
yeah.
What's your name?
Aylin,
Awesome. That's great. Cool. How old are you?
9.
You're 9. That's awesome. I like being 9. Do you know things?
Yes.
Okay. That's good. I need people to know things. Turn that down.
Turn it off.
Do you know what research is?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. What is research?
Looking up about something.
You're looking up about something.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Why?
So you can learn.
Okay, learning. Okay, so you research to learn. All right.
Yes.
Why do you want to learn?
To be smart.
To be smart. You want to learn to be smart. So you
Yes.
research in order to be smart?
Mhm.
Be smart. I love it. Thank you, baby. There it is. Thank you very much for that. That was fun. But yeah, research. It's something that I will do every single time I get on here and press record, no matter what. Because I'm not going to put bad information out into the ether.
I'm the guy who does his job. You must be the other guy.
Now, actually, I think we need to go back just a little bit and give the full timeline of events here, because Whaley has been promoting, again, in an attempt to do this strange narrative, this whole, you called me on my personal cell. My personal cell. My personal cell. All right. Let's go there.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it'll last.
So you know how I said that I went to uspto.gov and looked at their trademark filing, right? Yeah, I actually looked at it. I didn't look to see just, that it was filed. I read it. Because that's part of research. So let's, look at the phone records there. I did call them. See that? The 2 outgoing. They're each 1 minute long. And those phone calls were placed to numbers that I got from their trademark filings. This you? So this idea that I randomly contacted them on their personal cell phones, how even do I get their cell phone numbers, is absolutely garbage, because I contacted them on the phone numbers they published themselves to a governmental website as accurate and valid phone numbers to contact them for their business. If Bill and Whaley Keda did not want their personal cell phone numbers put out on the internet, why did they publish them? Now, both of those phone numbers are blurred out, and I don't have to do that. Because again, they published those as a means of contact for their business. But now that I know that it's their personal cell phone numbers, because Bailey decided to make a thing out of it, like I'm the asshole, I don't feel good publishing it and just making it easy for you to call them on their personal cell phone numbers. But the assets are there. Those are the numbers that they published. So weird that you decided to make that an issue. But again, this is what I expect from lying liars that lie. So, cool. And also, just to clear up another little bit of weirdness with all of this, when Bailey claimed that she wouldn't have even entertained it had she known what it was about, why did you call back? 39 minutes incoming phone call. We had a lovely chat. It was great. Talked to Bill and Whaley. They called me. They didn't know what it was about. Sure. I honestly don't know why you would pick this to lie about. But again, if you'd lie about something as stupid and as easily verifiable as this, then yeah, you are already showing what else you are willing to lie about. Now, to finally wrap up all of that and the weird claims that they are making in regards to this initial email, so I can even tell you what information I got from them in that phone call and move on. Another narrative that they're trying to paint within all of this is they didn't get the email. Okay, so first, let's timeline that. The 2 phone calls went out to their numbers there, and the email went out at that time, and they called me back there. I mean, aside from the fact that I got red receipts from this email, my God, could you make it easier for me? Bailey has a history of claiming she doesn't get emails. 4 emails? 4. You missed 4 because a customer got overcharged? You didn't get any of them.
Sure, Jan.
I bet they get all their emails notifying them of orders and money coming in. And just as an FYI, should you not know this because maybe you didn't get the memo, maybe via email, it's 2022. Nobody actually believes you when you say, I didn't get an email. Nobody. That is not a thing. And if that is actually a thing that you are experiencing within your email server and your web server, maybe you should fix that. Probably. Just a thought. But it's not a thing. It's complete and total garbage, and yet another way to detract from whatever situation is in front of you. Saying that you didn't get an email is lazy, not even thoughtful. Like, that's not even, like, you put no effort into that lie. It's not creative, and nobody believes you. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Also, while it's unfortunate that they tried and failed to paint a weird narrative about me creating an issue that nobody knew about and didn't have to exist in regards to everyone that they were filing DMCAs on, leading us here, this video, it did give me a reason to go back to their trademark filings because I had to get that asset showing that they published their personal cell phone numbers. And I noticed that their trademark application is actually in danger of being rejected. And they need to respond to the email that was sent out. Oof, I hope they got that email. Dumbest people ever. At any rate, now that you have a timeline of events and, everything that transpired, let's get to the conversation that I had with Bill and Whaley Keda when they called me.
Turn those little lights. La la, baby.
So when the Kedas called, we talked about, this whole situation and the history of Keda Soapery / molds, whatever, and, what they were doing and all of the jazz. And they talked about their file creation process, their bath bomb mold design process. And in the beginning, they were buying files from places and converting them and doing the things, which they also claimed in their meltdown that STL files didn't even exist when they started in 2018. Sure, 3D molds have been a thing for a very long time. STL files have been around since like 1987. So that's a weird, as I said, if you have access to social media, you also have access to Google. Don't just trust everything that everybody says. Anyway, the process for them, they started out buying files and, converting them to STL, doing the thing, and then they hired somebody that they go to make their artwork. Fine, cool, whatever. And so it's frustrating, right? To be the first and best and most important and successful bath bomb mold creator company to ever exist ever, only to find out that, a competitor is coming up in the game and selling something that looks like yours. I get that. That kind of sucks. I mean, it's also just part of the maker life, but it kind of sucks. And so they started, reaching out to companies. And in this case, at that moment, the way that they were reaching out to companies was not by reaching out to them at all, but by reaching out to their web hosts and filing a DMCA takedown, claiming copyright infringement under penalty of perjury.
Why you always lying?
And when I asked them why they didn't go the cease and desist letter route, as is customary for all of these situations, and also what I learned in reading copyright law, all of it, it's the law. You have to do that under specific parameters that they definitely fall into, but we'll get there. Will told me that there's 2 reasons why they did it this way. 1, because in the past, they had reached out and said, hey, can you please, stop doing this thing? And it became like a mess. People saying that they purchased these files to make these molds, properly from a designer that said they had the copyright on it and they were allowing them to use it to make bath bomb molds. We'll get there too. And 2, that there were just so many of them in this round that it was more efficient to just file against their web provider and not, reach out to these companies individually. Why they're trying to walk this back into only one person doesn't like me. It's just one person. One person. There's only one person. One person. Online at this point is very weird to me, given the conversation that I had with, Bill and Whaley, but also given the actual receipts of all these companies who are like, yeah, no, it happened to me too. There were so many that they couldn't reach out to these micro companies that they targeted for this, or there was just one. Conversation basically ended with me telling them, yeah, there's something here. This is actually really good information because everything that I've learned in this whole sleuthing is actually pretty fascinating. And it starts with bath bomb mold makers are not actually designing their own bath bomb molds. They're buying them, which just right high level for me flies in the face of the maker community. So it's like weird. I mean, no hate for companies that do that. It's just, it was strange. I always thought that they were designing their own. So fascinating. 2, they're all getting them from designers that have their own licensing and are claiming the intellectual property as their own because I made it. All of them. And C, playing in the copyright world is a very dangerous game. And this is stuff that we should, talk about. And I should get this information out to the Sudsers. That's how I left it. And I told them that I may or may not even include them in it, right? And that, of course, ended up having to be backburnered for a while because I have all of the other stuff that I'm doing. I run a business, like for a job. And I had other information that I wanted to get out to the Sudsers beforehand. And so that video didn't end up getting made. Anyway, the point is that conversation ended with me effectively on their side. And I went back to all of the other people and businesses that had contacted me. And I told them what I told them at the very beginning when they said that they had been hit with a false DMCA takedown. File your counterclaim immediately. File that. But as far as bringing awareness to the situation and doing whatever, I told them I don't know that I'm even going to bring Keda up in all of this because I genuinely felt bad for Keda because I have never seen a better example of failing up in any business endeavor, ever. They're out past their ski tips and they are floundering and trying very hard to regain some sort of control over whatever it is that they think they need to control. And, you know, while it is really very interesting that they are choosing to go after micro communities instead of the actual designers that these micro communities, these micro companies bought the designs from, it's also a violation of copyright law that they did it this way, from what I've learned. Could be wrong. So now that we have the overview of Keda and the phone call and all of that, let's go ahead and talk about why what they are doing is problematic, how they should have done it according to copyright law, and you know what you can do to avoid getting into this situation yourself. Okay, I actually do have to get work done with all of this while we're chit-chatting. So I'm standing and working and will probably have my head down through a lot of this because I, you know, am going to have to multitask in this to get it out. But it works because I can totally multitask. I mean, if the Kedas learned how to multitask, maybe they could harass micro creators and shorten that lead time on those molds. For anybody who's wondering and actually sticks around for, you know, actual other real videos and stuff, this is what I'm doing while I am talking to you about this. So this is an Okapi soap. When you see that, just know that while I was making those, I was also doing this. Let's talk about the nature of the filings, of how Keda enforced the copyright that they believe they own on some molds. And for ease of talking about all of this, I am going to assume that they do own it, that they are the copyright holders and everything is on the up and up again, and they specifically are the intellectual property holders, like they made it, and or have exclusive rights in writing in a contract to own the copyrighted material. I don't believe they do. But again, for ease of whatever. What Keda did with all of this was file DMCA takedowns on websites specifically. Now, the website server, the website host, like, you know, GoDaddy or SiteGround, or in the case of people that didn't have websites, through Etsy. Now, here's the thing. Etsy, GoDaddy, SiteGround, YouTube, they are not the arbiters of justice, right? They have a platform that you put stuff on. And if they wanted to have a final say in what did occur as far as copyright violation goes on their website, they would also have to claim ownership and responsibility for everything else that happened on their platform. Bad idea. Nobody wants to do it. See Twitter and Trump during the 2020 election. Big thing. So Etsy and GoDaddy, they are not looking at any of these claims. They are not doing anything above and beyond seeing that a claim was filed, right? That a DMCA takedown was filed and that the person that filled out the filing declared under penalty of perjury and all fair use assumptions that I am following the letter of the law in this filing of this DMCA takedown, because I believe that after all of my research and all of the things, that somebody has violated my intellectual property. That's all they do. They see that that came through. That's it. And then whatever platform that you're on, so let's just keep it GoDaddy to be simple and just use the one example. They come up with their own terms of service, their protocol when something like this happens. And the protocol for GoDaddy and Etsy is thus. The complaint comes in, they issue that complaint to the person who was selling the infringing material, or was alleged to have been selling the infringing material, and that person of which the complaint was filed on has some options. One of those options is removing it immediately, removing the material in question. Okay, done. Or filing a counterclaim. In either instance, whatever they decide to do, take it down or file a counterclaim, the website server is still not looking at this. GoDaddy is not looking at this. They are not going to copyright.gov to verify that this is actually a registered item that someone can do whatever with. They are not looking at your response that says, hey, no, I have files here that say I'm not in violation of copyright because I bought this. They are just trying to protect their platform. That is it. That is all. And the legal system knows that. And so that's why this has been a moving target for a very long time, and the laws continue to change, kind of based on what the courts do. And new provisions were written into the law accordingly because of situations like this, specifically to protect people who have means to believe that they, in fact, were not violating a copyright, or they didn't know that they were violating a copyright. So they wrote it into copyright law. And all of that information is found in Chapter 13, Sections 1300s of copyright law. And, it starts out with talking about the types of designs that are protected, right? As well as outlining what they are and, the actual definitions of things. But in general, the designs that are protected are original works and works that don't look like something else that's commonplace. Let's actually give the exact quote for that. Staple or commonplace, such as a standard geometric figure, a familiar symbol, an emblem, or a motif, or another shape, pattern, or configuration, which has become standard, common, prevalent, or ordinary. Like a headstone, like a rubber duck, like a heart, like a pirate ship, like a poo emoji. All examples of things that Keda has either tried to take down, claiming they own, copyrighted, it's unique, it falls under the, yep, sure, or they are trying to register as copyrights right now. This then goes on to say that after you've fulfilled all the parameters around the copyright and producing an actual copyrightable material, how you then need to act if you want to take an action on a copyright infringement. And the first step in all of that is design notice. And design notice is a pretty big deal. Design notice is something affixed to your work of art, however you may do it, wherever you may put it, that says, hi, this is copyrighted. And those things can technically exist with or without a registration, which is why you see like photographers put watermarks on all of their stuff. And why, if you have a good web developer, they tell you to put watermarks on all of your pictures. I'm sorry, Mr. Webman, because that's operating without the registration certificate from the actual federal government as the poor man's copyright. And in order to do anything with it, first and foremost, whether it's been registered or whether it hasn't, you have to have a design notice on each and every piece of art, copyrightable art, material, whatever that you have. And the copyright symbol at the bottom of the web page, that's not going to do it. That has never held up in court. It's a nice stopgap, but if you actually want to really protect your copyright, that doesn't do it. And at best case, from what the courts have found, because it's confusing and the average person could easily interpret that as, oh, well, maybe the copyright at the bottom of the website page means the website design is copyrighted, which is true. The courts have said, no, that's a no-go. That's not suitable for design notices. So they have parameters around that for actually putting on every piece of thing. If I take a picture of this and this is mine, and I put things on there, and it's all in section 1306 right here, hanging out. Or after it's registered, you can omit a couple of these or just say, copyrighted. and it's good. So first and foremost, if you believe you have, material that falls under protection of copyright, fine. The onus is still on you to make sure that you make that clear to everybody. This is mine. Belongs to me. By affixing it with something that says so. Like Disney, for example. Every single piece of artwork, material, everything that Disney has ever made, owns, whatever, is affixed with this. Every single piece. Looking at Keda's website, they have none of those things. None of those things. None. None. Okay. But how is that fair, right? I didn't know. I didn't read the law. I didn't know I had to do this. And somebody's taking my work. What do I do now? They put provisions in place for that too. So in section 1307 that says the effect of the omission of notice, we're going to talk about actions with the notice. So you've affixed that design notice, and actions without. So first up, actions with notice. It says that except as provided in subsection B, which is below that, the omission of the notice prescribed in section 1306 shall not cause loss of the protection. You still own it, and you can still file against it because you have the notice under this chapter against any person who, after receiving written notice of the design protection, begins an undertaking leading to infringement under this chapter. Okay, so what that's saying is you have to give the potential infringer written notice if you've affixed the design notice. Okay, so let's say you haven't done that. Actions without notice. The omission of the notice prescribed in section 1306 shall prevent any recovery under section 1323, which we'll get to because that's later, against a person who began an undertaking leading to infringement under this chapter before receiving written notice of the design protection. No injunction shall be issued under this chapter with respect to such undertaking unless the owner of the design reimburses that person for any reasonable expenditure or contractual obligation in connection with such undertaking that was occurred before receiving written notice of the design protection, as the court in its discretion directs. The burden of providing written notice of design protection shall be on the owner of the design. Okay, so again, that's saying written notice, right? And you might be waiting for some weird gotcha moment about how, a DMCA takedown is a written notice. We're going to talk about why I don't believe that's the case. And we're going to use court cases to do that. If you have not affixed a design notice to your product, you are already screwed. You can't do anything. And the interesting part with all of that says you have to compensate the other person that's using your material if they have other contractual, thing for their loss. Because the assumption is they didn't do it on purpose. And that's supposed to be the assumption per copyright law, as we've discussed, that you operate under. That they didn't knowingly do it. But it continues in order to fully explain that that's exactly the point of all of this if you're trying to, claim copyright infringement. So in section 1309 here, titled Infringement, acts of infringement, except as provided in subsection B, it shall be infringement of the exclusive rights in a design protected under this chapter for any person without the consent of the owner of the design within the United States and during the term of such protection to 1. Make, have made, or import for sale or for use in trade any infringing articles as defined in subsection E, or 2. Sell or distribute for sale for use in trade any such infringing article. Okay, fine. So it's saying you totally have protection. You do. But you don't have protection against the B, sellers and distributors. The way Keda did it is not how you're supposed to do it, by the law, because it says a seller or distributor of an infringing article who did not make or import the article shall be deemed to have infringed on a design protected under this chapter only if that person, 1, induced or acted in collusion with a manufacturer to make or an importer to import such article, except that merely purchasing or giving an order to purchase such article in the ordinary course of business shall not of itself constitute inducement or collusion. So they bought it. Every single person that Keda filed a DMCA takedown on, they have proof that they bought it from a graphic designer that says, with all of their licensing, this is mine, it belongs to me, I give you rights to go ahead and make these and then sell the molds. They have all of that. None of these people acted in consort with designers, which again, the burden of proof, all of that research, Bill, is on the owner of the copyright. Or 2, refused or failed upon the request of the owner of the design to make a prompt and full disclosure of that person's source of such article, and that person orders or reorders such article after receiving notice by registered or certified mail of the protection subsisting in the design. They're also giving parameters for kind of specifically how you are supposed to be putting these notices out into the ether to the people that you believe are in violation of your copyright protections. Registered and certified mail, not an email to GoDaddy. And also within that, it says, hey, the next thing is the person that you're filing this against, like, hey, I don't know if you know, but this is protected, needs to give up their source where they got it. Which all the people that they filed DMCA takedowns on, by the way, were more than willing to do. That was the thing that every single one of them said in the response to me after they sent me these notices from their website hosts. I don't know why they didn't just contact me. I would have told them where I got it. Here's the information. The law says that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing because, C, acts without knowledge. It shall not be infringement under this section to make, have made, import, sell, or distribute any article embodying a design which was created without knowledge that a design was protected under this chapter and was copied from such protected design. So on to all the bullshit that Bill and Whaley were spouting on their bath bomb page, and also onto the bullshit that they were saying to these people in emails about how it doesn't matter. And no, you can't, regardless. No, if you sell my stuff, it's still a violation and you're still in the wrong. That's not true. Per copyright law, they didn't know. They have easy proof to say they didn't know and that they didn't intentionally recreate your design. They sent the proof to me. You click a freaking website. There it is. Here's all the information from the guy who made it. Right there. The burden of proof to prove that they did know and they did it intentionally is on the person that owns the copyright. You're already doing so many things wrong. And again, this is assuming that they own these copyrights or can own these copyrights. And I don't believe they can. And I mean, it even goes down to, the E sworn statement, the application for registration shall be accompanied by a statement under oath by the applicant or the applicant's duly authorized agent or representative, setting forth to the best of the applicant's knowledge and belief that the design is original and created by the designer or designers named in the application. Currently, after Bill and Whaley decided to put out some DMCA takedowns on companies, they then filed copyrights. They filed some registrations for a group of copyrights, which are ridiculous, and I don't think they're going to get approved. But whatever, not the point. On every single one of them, they listed themselves as the designer. Already, if you try to go file something, just for funsies, go to copyright.gov and start the process of filing a copyright. It easily spells it out in the first third of the first page. Hey, this is the applicant name, this is the owner name, this is the designer name, if different than the owner. So even if their intellectual property holder, the original intellectual property holder, the graphic designer, signed over these rights, they didn't list that on their filings. They didn't give the federal government an opportunity to reach out to these designers and say, hey, is this okay? Did you actually transfer your intellectual property ownership over? If so, can you send that? And these are copyrights that they just filed in the last month. Again, assuming you are the copyright holder and this is duly yours. Fine. You are still required as the copyright holder to mark it with a design mark that shows, hey, this is under copyright protection, clearly visible so everybody can see it and knows, which Keda hasn't done. And then in all cases, whether they've done it or not, it all starts out with a letter saying, hey, I don't know if you know this, but this is mine. And in the cases of, hey, this is mine, because you're opening up the door to dialogue. The ultimate goal for anybody that owns a copyright with something like this is to actually shut down the source, right? And this is also why Disney does what Disney does. They have enough money in the world to sue every single person that is violating their copyright every single day. They have that much money. They can just do that. They don't do it that way. They sent out a cease and desist. Why did they send out a cease and desist? A, because it will not stand up in court if you haven't done that, as the courts have already shown. Get that cease and desist out. But two, the real reason you send out a cease and desist, the real reason you want somebody to stop doing it is because you want to stop it at the source. Because going after a micro 3D bath bomb mold company that, maybe made $50 a profit off of this specific mold that you're pissed off about in the last 8 months that they've been selling it, isn't going to stop the fact that the person that they duly and legally purchased the files from that claim to have copyright ownership of them from selling it again. Go to source. You get that information. You shut it down. And back to the question of whether or not a DMCA takedown filed on a web host is the same as a cease and desist. I don't believe it is, based on what I've read about some court cases that have been going on in the past few years regarding this, because of the policies that are in place with these particular providers. Going back to the GoDaddy example, the policy is if a copyright claim comes in, they immediately notify the person that is potentially infringing. They give them the information. Here's what we got from the other people. And then they give them options. You can, one, take it down. Then it's all done. By taking it down, it's opening yourself up to the argument that that's admitting guilt in court. Two, filing a counterclaim. Saying, nope, this is mine. I can prove that it's mine, whatever. And again, GoDaddy doesn't care. They don't care. They're not going to look at your proof. They didn't look at the other person's proof. They're just following their guidelines to make sure they're covering their own ass. The process with GoDaddy is if you file a counterclaim, your entire website goes offline for 10 days. The whole site. Not just the one page that has the mold in question. Whole site. But you lose income for 10 days. And in that 10 days time, GoDaddy is giving the original claimant 10 days to file a lawsuit. Because that's their only next step. That's it. They now have to prove they own that copyright. If you file a counterclaim that says, nope, this is mine, the onus is now on the original claimant to prove it's theirs. And the only way they can do that is by filing a lawsuit. If that lawsuit doesn't come in 10 days, GoDaddy then puts your site back up. And so at that point, Bill and Whaley Keda would have to actually go to court to prove that, in fact, they own all of these documents duly, and they did so at the time of the claim against a person. And regardless of whether or not they file a lawsuit, that person that did not know they were violating anybody's protected work at all. In fact, they have paperwork that says they're not from the original intellectual property holder. They are out 10 days of revenue. Granted, at that point, they can then countersue for damages and attorney's fees and all of that. But because there is a financial burden that is exacted by nature of just filing that DMCA claim, there's an immediate financial burden that is felt. There's a financial penalty for whatever the person that they're filing the claim on decides to do. That's a tortious act, inflicting pain. For that reason, while this has been in court, kind of a lot in the internet age, my website's down for 10 days. Yeah, that's huge damages. And because of that, I don't believe that the cease and desist letter and filing a DMCA takedown are one and the same. So this is ultimately why I am of the belief that, yeah, these were false DMCA takedowns. And that's before we even start talking about what it is that they filed a DMCA takedown on, why I don't believe they can even own these, and also why they just kind of don't own these. As I said, this thing is huge. An absolute house of cards that the Kedas are weirdly putting a fan on. And honestly, I don't think they're smart enough to feel foolish about the acts that they're taking that are ultimately going to hurt them. Okay, so let's talk about the articles in question, right? The intellectual property that they claim they own that led to them filing DMCA takedowns against websites and, competitors micro competitors, but competitors all the same. For the record, I'm not saying micro to be any sort of diss, right? This is how they all described themselves. They all just kind of recently started making bath bomb molds to sort of go alongside what they're already making with their soaps and their bombs and whatever. And so, by all counts, but the biggest bath bomb company that they have hit has made maybe $1,000 off of bath bomb sales in relation to the items that they were hit for. And when I first heard that they had done this, when people started sending me, I just got this DMC takedown from the Kedas, right? My initial thought was, well, I mean, these files, these designs, they've got to be something really cool, right? Like, there's a reason why the Kedas did this, and they're going to be able to absolutely prove that this is, theirs and not public domain, for example. Because while we will get into public domain and what that all means or whatever with the graphic designer, just high level, you can take public domain, you can modify public domain, but unless you're changing it like really substantially and creating something completely different, transformative, you can never own public domain. And so if you take a piece of clip art that's fair use and in the public catalog and you make a bath bomb mold out of it, that's fine. You can do that, but so can everybody else. And you can never claim that you own it because you did it first, because it still looks exactly like the same clip art. Really drive that point home, we're going to run a little montage of the items that they have claimed belong to them. They are the intellectual property holders of, while I put away the soap. I think my favorite in that list has to be the tombstone. Like, when I saw that one, I laughed out loud. ROFLLOLMAO. All of it. If you're gonna go so hard that you're actively gonna like scour the internet to find, whatever, and file ownership takedowns on, like, hey, I own this, you would think that you would have produced an item, an image, an end product that looked good. You can't fix that kerning? Do you see? The dot and the P and the I. It's so bad. Those are a sampling of the items in question that they filed DMCA takedowns on. Poo emoji. Going back to, the actual definition of what can and cannot be copyrighted, it specifically says that it can't be a symbol or a geometric shape or a known thing that exists or becomes a known thing that exists. And if the poo emoji is not in the public domain at this point, I guarantee somebody owns it, but that's yours. But yeah, it's a poo emoji or a nondescript monkey or a birthday cake. Stuff that's all easily found, again, within public domain, so like free clip art, or within the files for like Adobe, the Adobe files that all come with licenses that give you specific guidelines as to what you can and cannot use these for, depending on how much you spend on the licensing. And so there is a point in the Adobe licensing, I'm pretty sure, since I'm using that as an example, that says, yeah, you can make things like physical things with this and sell and distribute, but you can never own it. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know that Adobe actually has that in their licensing, but it does exist in companies. If you have the right licensing, you can distribute. You can make a bath bomb mold. What I'm making next? I'm making the chill pills next. Chill pills. Something that, by the way, actually is in the copyright records searchable. You can find it. Somebody owns it. And it's not Bill and Whaley Keda. Yet they have it on their website. Weird. But yeah, these were really generic things that they're saying, hey, I own this. And I think just on the offset, they can't own these things because they're easily recognizable as their original works within the public domain. Or you can find, oh, it looks the same, weird kerning at all, within the, like, Adobe licensing, which means Adobe realistically owns that if it is something that can be owned. Regardless, you don't own it. Even if you paid a designer to change it. Not changed enough. So that was really strange to me. It's not only strange that they were hitting small companies, but also strange that they were hitting small companies that were selling these, right? It's not Mickey Mouse here. Although Will Keda, in his correspondence with one of these people, did compare this whole situation to selling of Mickey Mouse. He compared it wrong, but basically he was likening an STL file for a bath bomb mold to Mickey Mouse. Seems legit. Still tastes bad. So as I said, when I saw all of this, I of course went to the copyright website to do a search to see what copyrights they actually had recorded with the government, and none at that point. At that initial moment when they had filed all those DMCA takedowns, none of them had been recorded. Since then, after they filed the DMCA takedowns, they put some copyrights up. Weirdly, and I am interested in seeing how those all shake out. Given their trademark debacle, you would think that they would hire an attorney at some point to handle this. But you know, let's do a montage of the ones that they are currently trying to copyright, because I gotta go get baking soda. So again, it's pretty weird. I mean, things like ambulances and bicopters and a sword, nondescript shield, they're all kind of basic shapes. And so while I don't know what will ultimately end up happening with these, I would be surprised if these actually got approved. But for the Copyright Office's, videos that they put out, and you can go check out their YouTube, they give really helpful information. They process 500,000 of these every year. So I don't know. Maybe they're not looking as hard at the Copyright Office as they are at the Trademark Office. Time will tell with that. But it's interesting that none of the ones that they filed are the ones that they actually filed the DMCA takedowns for. So it's important for you to hold and protect your intellectual property, or it's not. Interesting that they are choosing to file for these and not the ones that they hit other businesses for. Physical pain at this point.
Singing out loud to the choir, liar, liar.
Okay, I am tired of talking about this at this point. We gotta wrap this up. What does this all mean? Well, first up, what this means is that copyright is a very big, very robust, very nuanced set of laws. Lots of laws. Ever-changing laws. And so as a result, we will be doing 1 or 2 more videos on that specifically with subject matter experts in the field to help us sort of navigate this for anybody who's trying to, get into the bath bomb 3D mold making world, or just anybody in general who is making and producing and trying to be good, responsible business owners. But on, high level, until then, the very best thing that you can start doing as a business owner, and you're ever in question of these things, is contact an intellectual property attorney. Seriously. These are very nuanced laws. There's a lot going on here. If you think that you need to be doing something to protect your business for the benefit of your business, whatever, contact them, get a consult, have them file the paperwork. As we're seeing with the Kedas, it's apparently tough. And obviously make good choices. At any point, if you are ever hit with a claim that you have violated somebody's copyright the way that these people were, always file a counterclaim, would be my advice. I'm not an attorney, but from what I can tell, it doesn't look good if you just take it down. And in the case of this would have required them to actually produce all the documents proving that they own any of this, which would have been interesting, at the very least. But also in the case of this, I feel like this could be a bullying tactic, so don't let yourself be walked on. If you legitimately don't believe that you are in violation of something if you receive that takedown, file the counter. Make them show. Would be my advice. But again, I'm not a lawyer. To all of the Keda situation, as I said, we will be doing 1 or 2 more videos with all of this, and we will not be talking about them unless they start losing their goddamn minds on the internet again. In which case, hi, I'm here. As I say at the end of all of these deep dives, wherein we are talking about things that have decisions involved at the end of all of it, you make them on your own. These are your choices to make. You make the best decisions for your business, for yourself, for your morals, for whatever, and go from there. I am certain that the majority of soap makers that are on this had no idea who Keda was before this started, because we're not deep in that bath bomb world, right? When we need a bath bomb mold, we just go on Etsy, online, wherever, we buy it, we don't think much about it. Maybe think about it in this case. Maybe think about where you're putting your doll hairs. For me, they don't go to Keda. Ever. And specifically talking about, Keda Soapery, Keda Molds, whatever. I mean, best case scenario, they are a prime example of failing up. They make really bad business decisions. And they have no morals, no code of ethics, no anything good in dealing with their peers. And so if they have that for their peers, you have to think about what they also have for their customers. Worst case scenario, they are knowingly and willfully violating the law, I think. Who knows where they fall in all of that. But all of this with Keda is a moving target, and I, for one, am very interested in finding out where it all shakes out. And since this is probably the last time that I'm going to mention them again, unless they decide to f around and find out again, I just have to get the last dig in, because I also found this comment very, very amusing. First up, YouTube is my hobby, not my job. I do this for fun. I do this to educate and to be part of logical, rational discourse with like-minded people on the internet. This is not my job. And while AdSense revenue is fun, it is a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a percent of what my business makes, what I make actually running my business, which is my job. So, to compare apples and apples, I guess I could put our financials up side by side, and we can talk about who's tiny, because Keda has their financials online. You guys are so dumb. But I don't actually need to get that petty, because honestly, the only actual response to that is I am just a person here existing in my corner of the internet, doing my thing, running my business. You are the business that has decided that the very limited hours you have in your day should be spent on sussing out and targeting small competitors. Maybe that $300 is going to make or break your business. I don't know.
We are not alike. There's not alike us on the mic.
Anyway, thank you to the Sudsers for being here. You guys are amazing. As always, I appreciate you oh so very much. Again, next up in all of this, we will be actually talking about design process, because this is a pretty complicated thing in that you are dealing with digital artwork, so files, as well as the finished product. Like both work together in something like this for copyright and ownership and all the things. It's very fascinating. Got to bring in the big dogs for that. And, you know, we're going to end year 2 and go on to year 3 content, which will be amazing. A big special thank you to the Soap and Clay Kidlets who did all of the editing for this. It was a lot of fun. We actually got to use this as part of their coding project and their IT stuff that they've been working on. So this was super enjoyable across the board. They had some really fun ideas that we then implemented within all of this editing. In case you see that and it looks different than what I normally do, that's why. That's why. Thank you, Soap and Clay Kidlets. You're amazing. Sudzers, you are also amazing. Thank you for existing. Again, already said that, but I'm out of here. I'm tired and I have work to do. So I will see you guys all again tomorrow for another round of soapy fun. Bye.